because it's a possibility for anyone to wake up to that, or to wake up from the dream and the illusion and the essentially the delusion of separation, distinctness, struggle, suffering, seeking. That's all really it's a dream in the mind, and it can come to an end.
Hello, everyone. I'm here, delighted to have Dr. Angelo Dilullo on a call with me. We're going to talk about awakening. We're going to talk about liberation. Angelo is working as an anesthesiologist, and he went through a radical shift in identity, also known as awakening, I think 25 years ago or so, when he was 24, around there. He has written a book called Awake, It's Your Turn, which I picked up about a month ago. And he has a very nice YouTube channel called SimplyAlwaysAwake, which is where I found him. And he was cool enough to show up on a call here on this Fredosophy podcast, which is in the very beginning. 4 episodes in 1 year. It's going a little slow, but it'll probably catch momentum soon. Yeah, good to have you on the call, Angelo.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'm really, because I read in your book, Angelo, that when you're talking one-on-one with people, you prefer to get into the immediate moment of things. But and I try to get into the immediate moment of things when I'm inquiring or sitting or being.
Sure.
But when I have the chance to speak to someone who has gone through a process like you have, I'm very tempted to ask all these questions about about the process, and maybe about stages, maybe about how things changed for you and how you have seen things changed for others who have gone through awakening, their psychology, their day-to-day life, perhaps how they look at relationships. One reason why I really wanted to talk to you, Angelo, was that you have already been living a quite long post-awakened life, as it happened about 25 years ago, I think. So you've probably seen a lot already, although you said that you didn't tell anyone for 15 years about this. Which yeah, I was pretty quick talking on YouTube when I had my first initiations, you could say.
It's a different time. In the 1990s, we didn't have social media really at all. We had internet, but even on television, what's the word for it, TV shows that are like real life TV, like it was even a new genre then. So the idea of like telling your life to people in mass didn't even exist for the average person. So I don't know if I sometimes I wonder if I would have then, if that had happened, would I just get on YouTube in 1990s? But who the heck knows? But partially it just it just wasn't something people did. Yeah. But also energetically, I could just see that it just wasn't time to do anything like that. It's not something I contemplated. It was simply a matter of life gets very, very simple. And it's literally, what's the next step, the next footfall on the ground, the next, glance at the sky, and life just goes on that way. And so you don't actually know what's going to happen next. And I would have never in a million years guessed I'd be maintaining a YouTube channel and wrote a book about this and talking to people who are waking up every single day. I would have never in a million years guessed that would have happened. But also there's no resistance. So it just happens how it happens.
Okay. And you never had, let's say you had your first awakening experiences. Did you then think that, oh, I'm definitely going to tell this to my friends? That didn't occur either for you.
Okay, so there were sort of pre-tastes of awakening, I would say, like maybe you could call them tremors. The coming earthquake was like there were tastes of it, but they were very much experiential. And it doesn't mean that they were a small thing to the person, to the sense of being a separate person going through a life. They're really a big deal. They feel like the earth like shaking under your feet, sort of, and it's something bigger than you happening. So they were a big deal in that sense, in the relative sense of the individual. And I remember them happening. I remember getting very excited, and I did tell people. I didn't know what to make of it. I knew I didn't have words for it either, but I had no idea what was coming. And after what came, it's not even about like trying to relate it to anybody. Not for me, it wasn't trying to relate it to anybody, because it was so obvious and clear that it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't even, there aren't the way I saw the world after all of that happened was so different. I didn't even see individuals. I didn't see individual people. I didn't see the storylines people get hypnotized by, just aren't real. They're not real at all. And so whether or not those storylines continue or end doesn't actually matter, because they're going to end anyway, sooner or later, when the body dies away. And but all of this is just in the relative sense. So I could see that also clearly, that there was no impetus at all to go out and talk to people about this, because it's not special. It went beyond, it went through phases and stages where it felt very special and, incredible and earth shattering and all of that. And then even that goes away. Everything goes away. It's a very strange thing to talk about. But the all paradigms and levels of identity, the individuality, the sense of being separate from anything, the sense of there being an inherent way that reality functions, all that goes away completely. Because you see that it was an illusion. It's not like reality goes away. It's just that there's that word reality doesn't refer to anything. You realize it never doesn't refer to anything in any context that you ever thought it did. Because it was referring back to a self that was experiencing reality, and all that is just gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. Then it's like, well, what do you do? What do you do next? Well, you just do whatever happens is just the next thing in the relative sequence.
I was going to ask about that. What's next?
Well, it's very funny. When we just started talking before you were recording, for anyone listening, we were talking about how you started with a sort of comedy channel and like pranks and stuff. And I really like that, because so if you watch my channel and you watch like Rupert Spira and Eckhart Tolle, there's something about this that seems so serious, right? It seems like such a big deal in your life when it's playing out, and it is to the individual, of course, right? It's the biggest deal. And yet there's something so funny in all of this. There's something so jester-like in the middle of what's happening with reality. It's incredible. And so one thing that was next for me after all of this stuff happened was I started seeing things. It's just so funny. I started seeing things in a very almost comical way, but it's the kind of joke that it's not funny when you're suffering. So it's not like I think suffering is funny, but looking back at what I perceived myself to be as the one that was suffering is kind of a joke, because it was trying to solve its own problem by recreating itself so that it could solve its own problem. It makes no sense. And so there's something very whimsical and funny and totally innocent about reality, about nature, that is also left. And it has innocence. It's such innocence that it doesn't know anything special or magical. It's not like that. There's no journey for it to go on. It's just reality experiencing itself. That's what's happening all the time for everyone. And it's incredible. It's sublime. It's totally mysterious too. And so that's what was left. And that's all that's left. And that wasn't an event. Like, I don't experience it as if it was an event in time. And even to say I don't experience it, it's conventional language. I have no way of other way of sort of relating this stuff. But there's what ended was the illusion that there was someone experiencing, that there was someone or something separate from reality experiencing reality. So when that goes away, the self and reality go away. The paradigm of someone traversing a life, a path, all of it's just completely obliterated. and what's left is in completely beyond language. It's not nothing. It's not like a blank space. That's not how reality is experienced, but there's no way to talk about how it is, because it's not in time and it's not in space. It's not in space because there's no division, there's no separate objects, separate experiences, separate appearances. And it's not in time because there's no sense that there was a time before and there's going to be a time after. That's just the sort of bookkeeping of the mind that makes it seem as if that's the case. So when you take all of that out of experience, you can see that there's not much language left, if any, to talk about how things are. or what, even when people go, well, what's your experience? I can't even tell you. There's no way. I don't even know where to look to answer the question. But there's something that wants to be related about it, for sure, because it's a possibility for anyone to wake up to that, or to wake up from the dream and the illusion and the essentially the delusion of separation, distinctness, struggle, suffering, seeking. That's all really it's a dream in the mind, and it can come to an end if you're interested in that. We started off with pretty direct, heavy sort of pointing here, which I don't know why this happens that way sometimes. But anyone listening to this, they're either going, man, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard, or they're like, that is complete nonsense. Like, this makes no sense whatsoever. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you sense anything in this that is interesting to you, then this is a rabbit hole that goes very deep, and it's there for you if you want. It's your birthright to wake up to reality, unfiltered reality, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, that's your book starts off with that, everyone, you can wake up, if you want. I have been talking a lot about social anxiety and giving tips on how to overcome social anxiety, but it's really tempting for me to sort of sell the spiritual awakening to people, try to find a way to maybe make it more appealing and less scary, and more doable and more realistic, and also and there is a culture that you shouldn't talk too much about the benefits and the how it's going to be like, what it's going to be like, because then the mind, like you said in the video, the mind can get very fixated on the ideas about how it's going to be, and then that can separate you from it, push you from it, keep it away. And then but at the same time, also I also wonder if since people are already seeking so much else, with a subconscious or conscious hope that it will make them happy and complete, and then maybe it's just a hypothesis, but maybe pointing them into the, let's call it the spiritual path of awakening, will actually more deliver up to those hopes that they had of becoming more complete.
I have a couple reflections on what you just said. Two things stuck out. One is you mentioned how sometimes it's a bit taboo to talk about this as such, or awakening as such. And we can talk about a couple of different areas, or let's say like let's say subcultures where that's the case, and why I think that is, if it may be interesting to people. But more importantly, I love what you said there, that so to me, you have to start with authenticity. And if we're authentic as humans, at some point we'll realize exactly what you just said. We want to feel better. We want to stop suffering, right? We want to stop suffering. We want to get to a place where we don't suffer. And there's some instinct that says, I know there's a spontaneity that's possible. There's an innocence that's possible. I know it because I felt it. And I suspect it's underlying even right now, right? That's wonderful. So wonderful. And that's true. And we have to start with that kind of authenticity. And so what this sort of message usually says is something like, that's great. Of course you've been seeking. Of course you've been looking for peace in relationship, in love. I want to be loved. I want to be seen. I want to be understood. I want to feel okay with myself. I want to get over my anxiety. I want to feel like I'm moving through life fluidly and I trust myself to do that. Of course, you want all that. This message says, and that's great. I have no problem with it. Let's turn around and look back and see why. What is it about me that I'm perceiving that something's wrong with? How did that start? Where did that come from? Where did the sense that I'm not okay already come from? Where did that arise? Is it something I started believing at some point? Is it something my parents taught me inadvertently? Is it something we're collectively reinforcing among one another? Is it a biological thing? Like, we don't really know, but it's valid. What my message is, it's extremely valuable, and it's not socially endorsed almost ever to go, oh wait, you can actually look back and find, well, what is it that all this seems to happen to me? What is let's look for the me. Let's find that. That's one approach to this self-inquiry. It's one very powerful approach, and there are different ways to do it. But let's look at, well, okay, let's look where the problem actually seems to be in the first place. Can I even find it? And keep moving toward that, right? So I think meditation as a whole sort of has that tendency. It sort of has that, at least outwardly, it's sort of sold that way. Let's turn our attention inward. That's good. It's great. And it does. It calms the mind. It calms the body. Self-inquiry is like adding rocket fuel to that.
Right.
Let's let the gloves come off and really find out what's at the core of this suffering, right? So yeah, what you said is very valuable. Just look at what we do. Look at how we live our lives. We seek a lot. Right? And we live in the promise of the future when I'm going to finally feel okay. When I finally find the right lover, when I finally find the right partner, when I finally find the right job, when I finally have an income, when I finally, whatever we seek, the belief is just that, well, then I'll finally feel better. But if you're really honest with yourself and you just stop and go, but have I ever really felt better? In fact, the more I've been seeking as I became an adult, the more uncomfortable I've actually felt, the more distanced I've felt from my life, from just the moment to moment experience of being alive.
Yeah.
Why is that? Maybe they're causally related. Maybe the seeking and that sense of isolation, separation, anxiety, fear, depression, all of that, maybe they're actually related. And I would say 100% they are. But you're not a guilty party. It's not like you chose to make yourself suffer. This is a partially an well, I don't want to say partially. It's a cognitive process. It's a biophysiologic process, but it's strongly reinforced and solidified by social conditioning, actually, internal and external social conditioning. So it has a lot of momentum to it. So it takes, first of all, an intention to get to the bottom and the root of all this, and a sort of sustained attention. And it can be very helpful to have techniques, proven things that have worked for other people. And third, interaction with somebody who has actually crossed these gateless gates. That makes the biggest difference of all, probably. And it doesn't mean you have to have a teacher, a personal one-on-one teacher, but expose yourself through reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, reading anything by Adyashanti, watching these videos, going to a retreat. You want to put yourself in the crucible of transformation, go to a retreat with a good teacher. Like, those kinds of activities and actions will really start changing the way you experience everything. And you might get little tastes of it at first. At some point, some significant shift or alteration in identity will occur, and you can't expect. I can't even tell you what's on the other side of that. I could describe it, but it doesn't matter until it happens. It has to happen, because before that, anything I say will be incorporated into what you already believe about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The identity will get a hold of it and conveniently and neatly put it in little boxes. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the identity itself becoming literally altered, or I don't even want to say altered, because it's more like what felt like a very small, enclosed, isolated, separate identity is suddenly seen to be a complete illusion. And then what identity even is becomes so fluid and so vast and so intimate that it gets, this is where language really starts to fail. But that's what I would call a true awakening.
Yeah. And when you say true awakening, that means, is that what you also call liberation?
No,
is there a difference?
Liberation comes a little later. Yeah.
Yeah. So liberation, when you mean that, when you say that, what do you mean then?
I mean, a pretty sort of, let's say, deep stage of realization. I don't want to say advanced, because all these words are really loaded, and it's not advanced, it's not exalted, you're not a better person, it's nothing like that. It's actually less. There's less filtering, less. But what happens after awakening is you start to have, because the identity structure that was sucking up tons of attention and burning up your energy and keeping essentially the mind self-obsessed in a lot of ways, when that breaks down and you start to experience, you don't start to, you immediately experience what you feel like you somehow forgot by thinking, by trying to solidify into a thought-based human being at some point in your life. What you forgot was something you could never forget. It's never not been here. And it's this vast experience of being. And that in and of itself is deeply enjoyable initially, for sure. Like my advice at that point usually is just rest in that. Don't do anything else. Don't worry about anything else. Give yourself time and space to just steep yourself in that piece of infinite being, essentially. And it's a huge transformation. But beyond that, at some point, temporarily speaking, you will start to do work. You'll do some emotion work, shadow work, and then you can start to actually directly engage the more subtle but fundamental perceptual filters that actually make reality look like it's divided up, like it's set, like there are separate objects. There's a self in here and objects out there and others.
Right.
These are very subtle perceptual filters that are easy to talk about conceptually, reasonably, but that can be a big mistake, because there are people who learn this. They understand this stuff pretty well. You can learn it by reading the suttas in Buddhism and so forth, but don't have the experience of it. So this is critical in my experience, that if you take this up that we're talking about, if you're watching and listening to this and be like, that's my path in life, and there's going to be people who will have that happen here, it's critical that you realize this is about experience primarily. It has to be experiential, and it has to be direct, not theoretical. So when we talk about later stages, we can, but it will be just theoretical and essentially useless to you until you have a first shift, which the approach to that is very singular and direct. So that's why I probably spend most of my time talking about that first shift, because that's what most people are working toward, I guess, or naturally moving toward. There are more and more people who have gone through that, though, and they are working with these subtler fixations and subtler perceptual filters. Now, when those are gone, the more subtle perceptual filters are gone, that's what I would call liberation.
Yeah.
It's liberation from the illusion of, essentially, it's liberation from the illusion of self in all its aspects.
Right.
Self, form, perception, struggle, reactivity. It's liberation from all of that.
Even reactivity.
Yeah.
But emotions can still arise, but there's no one, no sense of
subtle.
Someone experiencing them, and no resistance to it.
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say there's no one resisting. That's right. There's no resistance. I shouldn't say they're subtle necessarily, because even subtle doesn't make sense here. Is it subtle, or is it completely overarching experience? Like I can't even make that distinction, but an emotion is just what it is. Sadness can arise. Now, some emotions don't arise anymore. What I would say is, and things like shame, guilt, resentment, the remnants of them could be seen, the conditions perhaps, maybe even a thought, but there's no feeling of that anymore at all. So the emotions, I would say, calm down tremendously, and they're more like textures of the. So what emotions feel like to me is something like this. They're more like the textures of the natural synchronicity of what we call the individual with nature itself. So when something dies away in the perceptual framework of the human mind, something dies, there can be grief, sadness, loss. This body can respond and cry. That can happen, sure. But the whole of that experience is a beautiful synchronistic display of energy shifting, changing forms. That's all it ever is. So there is no death really any more than there's birth.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah. So there's nothing denied. You don't need to deny anything. There's nothing to say, oh no, I don't feel that, I don't have that. Yeah. Anything is possible. It's fine. But what you said is true, that the resistance is what's notably not there.
Mm-hmm. And so
any illusion of what there is that could ever possibly resist anything. That's the key to the whole deal.
Yeah. And these emotions such as guilt and shame and resentment has a lot of personalness to them, and that's maybe why they disappear
Yeah,
after the liberation occurs,
I
or
would say so.
non occurs.
Yeah, I would say so. And I would tell anyone listening to this that it probably sounds great to not have those, but be really careful you don't bypass anything, because the path to this, the path to living without, let's say, psychological fear, is learning to live with psychological fear.
Hmm.
It's to fully penetrate it. Everything has to be fully penetrated, seen, experienced. And that's when you then I love this saying, what's real will never go away. What's real isn't going to go away, but a lot does go away because there's a lot that's not real. And it's the aspects of your experience that are laden with struggle, isolation, and a lot of repressed emotion. Um,
Hmm.
because at the core of all of these emotions we're talking about, shame, greed, let's not say greed, but shame, helplessness, resentment. What's at the core of all of this, all of those, is a fundamental assumption of self and other somewhere.
Yeah.
But also there's a tendency, a conditioned tendency to avoid these emotions that's keeping them sort of feeling like they're festering in there somewhere, right? We're just constantly avoiding. At the core of anything,
Yeah.
though, is nothing but clarity,
Huh.
beauty,
So
innocence.
in let's say the emotion shame,
Mm-hmm.
um, that is something I can encounter sometimes, and I feel that is, running a lot of my avoidance, shame,
Mm-hmm.
and guilt, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
especially shame.
Yeah,
Is that, and that's something I eventually have to encounter fully, in the most
yeah.
intimate way that I have avoided my whole life in order to, pass through the layers of self.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that shame is, what is that shame? What is it? It does it assume self and others? Is that at the core of shame? I'm really interested in that
Yeah.
emotion.
We could definitely go down the shame road and talk about the rest of our conversation could be about it. It's a really ripe area for investigation for anyone, whether you're interested in awakening or not.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah,
but but
yeah.
i but I would say a couple things for you, just based on what you just said. Now, depending on who I'm talking to and what the context is and how much insight they have, I may talk about shame differently. And this is just, again, for anyone listening. So for you, and the way you just described it, I would say the first thing to know is shame is a composite experience. It's a composite experience. If you just
Compositive.
look at a leaf, composite,
Okay.
composite.
What does
Yeah,
that
it
mean?
has more than one facet to it and more than one aspect to it. It
Okay.
has a sort of feeling aspect, has an emotional aspect, and it definitely has belief aspects.
Right.
And it's related to other beliefs. So for you, in your sort of level of insight that I'm just picking up, I don't know, but just my sense, you're very clear and you're very open to working in the emotion spectrum, obviously, and that's really wonderful. So for you, I would say start looking. I think you already have the insight for the acceptance, and not only cognitively but in your heart. I can feel that you are about acceptance with this, and that's really good. So that's that's the arena in which what I'm going to say next occurs. So
Hmm.
keep that open heartedness about this and willingness to explore it and accept. And beyond that, um, it's not so. If you don't have that part, then what I'm going to say about exploring it in direct aspects, the various facets of it, it'll turn into like a almost like you have a scalpel. It'll be like a dissection, and that's not what this is supposed to feel like. But you can start to actually discern the beliefs that are feeding into the resistance patterns around it. You can start to discern other emotions that are attached to it. You might even start to discern certain storylines and narratives from earlier life that led you to make a decision at some point that I'm not going to look at this part of myself. So
Yeah.
all of those facets of this composite experience we're calling shame are valuable for you to investigate, because you've already done the first big important had the first big important shift with this. That's what I sense, at least, that you're already willing to come in contact with it. I mean, the vast majority of people get so uncomfortable even hearing the word shame, they're not going to listen much longer, right? And then some people are like, yeah, I really want to look at all my emotions, but shame is a negative emotion. It's one I don't want to look at so much. And then again, as we evolved, and especially if we've had a shift in identity, suddenly you're like, oh God, I have to look at it. I may not want to, but it doesn't matter. I've got to look there. That's where the juice is. And I instinctually know that. And then the next stage of it is sort of this place where you start to actually enjoy it. It's painful, it's challenging, there are a lot of resistance patterns still, and yet there's something about it that's sort of precious. Yeah. And that's where I sense you are. And once you're there, that's 90% of the work is being willing to not run from it. Then you can start to investigate again the components of it, gently, without trying to dissect it or get rid of anything. It's about clear seeing, clear feeling, direct experience.
Right. Cool. Yeah. Very fine. Finely articulated answer. There's a lot of ways to go there. I could share some of what my process have been like. It was 6 years ago when I had there was this great shift that happened, and it was like a big part of my mind just disappeared, and so it was a very different way of seeing the world after that happened. And it didn't go away. It was just there the whole entire time. And it felt like 100 times more meaningful way of perceiving the world. And after that, there was some energy moving around in the system, and releasing and death angst around me, like this idea of death, and I wasn't sure what was happening. And then after about
Can I ask you a
7,
question about that?
yeah.
If you, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Other people might be. Did you have some sort of practice or inquiry or spiritual interest at all, or were you one of the people who just had it come out of nowhere?
Oh yeah, no. I had I had been looking for it for a couple of years at that point. I picked up a book. I read Eckhart Tolle 10, 11 years ago, and then in 2014 I read. I just decided to go. The word enlightenment just really appealed for some reason, because I've been running around always looking for success and attention on YouTube. And then I figured, what is the thing that I can trust more? No amount of YouTube or online attention or personal attention or success or money is really reliable in the end in terms of feeling complete. So I picked up that book, Jed McKenna, Spiritual Enlightenment, The Damnedest Thing. That was 2014. And then that became my whole my number one interest. So this was, whenever I had time, I was usually reading or sitting in some way, or relaxing, trying to relax, or relaxing into I like what Adyashanti says, the deepest thing I knew. And so and then I had an experience with ayahuasca about 40 days before this shift happened, and that was really experiencing a great celebration of the divine or myself. Now you have when you round a game, or you have made it, essentially, big congratulations. And I thought, okay, now I'm gonna go back into the world and wear white robes, and it's just possible that only Jesus and Buddha went through the same experiences I have done now.
Yeah.
So But yeah, the way I was meditating and relaxing was different after that experience. And then 40 days after it happened, that shift there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, after that, for these years, it's been this. Yeah, there was no. I know I can't really avoid. There was yeah, I knew that I couldn't resist, and there was no point in resisting experience anymore. I wouldn't get anything out of it long term. So yeah, the shadow work, and then eventually maybe 2-3 years ago, getting into Vipassana and Daniel Ingram, the pragmatic Dharma community, more emphasis on, and also self-inquiry about, the subject object relationship, and trying to dissolve that fabrication of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just giving you a little story there. I see that I'm almost disappearing into some light here. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I love it.
Yeah, because we did talk a little bit about this. I found it very interesting when you said you talked about the shadow work. You have to look, after the experience of awakening, shadow work, and looking into yeah, where the suffering is coming from. Uh, I'm curious, and I did write this down before the interview. How much healing is needed to wake up? Have I written down? And does healing go better or faster after the big liberation, processing of emotions? Because you're among those who have also said that after liberation there will also be, processing of emotions, right? Or am I wrong? Maybe you haven't said that. Maybe I'm mixing
Yeah.
up.
It really depends what you mean by processing of emotions. They're experienced for sure
Yeah, yeah.
after liberation, no doubt. And what I would say is that there is I don't know. I don't know if I have a good word for this. Like I could say evolution of realization or something like that. But up until liberation, I might call it. You obviously are familiar with Adyashanti, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he
Very.
makes a distinction in the difference between like the death of ego and the death of self. Um, it's a very very obvious and distinct and final, absolutely final end to something that does happen, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious. I mean, it's beyond obvious, and so in one sense, the spiritual process ends because the one who thought it was going through it completely comes to an end, and that is it's a distinct finality of sorts.
Hmm.
But the world you enter then is so impossible to talk about that anything I can say is just going to be paradoxical. But I will say this: in the relative sense, the body mind, the person, Angelo, there's evolution. Like I definitely see, and again, when I say I now, and I'm talking in this sense, I mean it conventionally because there's no other words to talk about this. But I see that this expression, this Angelo expression, whatever, does evolve even in a certain sense in the spiritual context. But what I notice it is quicker and easier ability to tune into where someone else is when they're it's all about other people waking up now. That's what it's about. There's nothing to wake up. There's nothing, it's over, right? So what, there's some amazing thing that in the relative sense I still wake up with people. I wake up when people are waking up and I feel like I'm them doing it.
Wow.
It's just like that, right? It's just immersion. Yeah. So what I notice is that there's a improve over time, and this will decline at some point when there's cognitive decline here. This body mind will ultimately decline and die away and rot in its grave, right? Dust, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? And there's something so beautiful with that. But there's definitely a deepening of the ability to completely meet someone in the relative at any level of the relative. Okay. The opposite of that would just so I can maybe point this out for contrast. The opposite of that would be something like always staying in the absolute perspective when I'm talking to people, like never leaving the absolute. There's nobody, there's no one, there's no path, I can talk like that and it's true, but it's not the whole truth, because it's totally avoiding the relative world, right? So there's an ability that seems to improve, with its ability to totally meet someone completely without any resistance, without any tendency to try to move myself or them into the absolute, because I can do both, right, in the relative world. That tendency just going completely away and meeting someone fully in their own suffering, but just in their whole life, not just suffering, but their whole life as it is. And is as paradoxical as it is, that actually helps them wake up faster. But again, they have to want to wake up. There's something, I would not do that with someone who has no inclination to wake up at all. I wouldn't even mention this. I'm disinclined to even talk about this subject unless someone directly asks me like this, or,
Right.
you know, I've had so many interactions with people for so long that I started writing about it. Then I started making videos about it, just because I know there are people out there who will come in contact with it. But the inclination is not to even talk about this at all with casual friends or work acquaintances. So, so I just wanted to make that distinction for anyone who's listening, to understand that there's no agenda with it at all, zero. But there's, when someone's waking up and I'm interacting with them, they have my attention. And when I not only hear that they want to wake up, but I feel that they're serious about waking up and they're really willing to let go, they have all my attention. And I can go right where they are. And it's fucking awesome. It's amazing to like just wake up again, you know, with someone, as someone, even though it's ultimately going to lead to oblivion, but that's okay.
Okay.
Because it's oblivion for no one. It's all paradoxical.
Huh. And how does it usually work? Are these conversations effective when you're noticing that someone would like to have that experience, and you hear that and you go and you start running your thing, and then I'm sure there must be a transmitting something that is transmitting as well.
It is for sure. Transmission is a very real phenomenon. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I can feel it in people I can watch like an Adyashanti video. I've met Adyashanti a few times and been to his retreats. Like, you feel it energetically in the local vicinity. It's not subtle, you know. And the more sensitive and awake you are, the more obvious that gets. So transmission 100% happens. But also, if we were talking about my perspective, let's say, I only feel that person, like when I'm looking at you right now, you're what's real for me. There's not a sense of a body at all, like my body or something back here, right? It's just, you're what's real for me. And so the flavor of our conversation, it doesn't surprise me you had an awakening several years ago and have done a lot of work, because right at the beginning of this conversation, we went really deep and I was pointing in a very direct way, which I could say kind of surprised me, because on most interviews, it's not like that. It starts out in a very simple way. It starts out in a very like story-based way. But anyway, so my experience is your experience is my experience, and underlying it, there's a transmission that's happening that's not person to person. It's the person I'm talking to who's waking up. They're like transmitting to themselves. Reality is transmitting to reality. It's just using this funny narrative of a person talking to another person. So that's transmission, but it's a very real phenomenon. It's quite powerful. I think Eckhart Tolle says this. You know, he says, come in contact with people who have gone through the process themselves, or however he says it, that it's true. It's like a piece of wood that's on fire and you put it next to another piece of wood, and sooner or later the other piece is on fire. It's very much a natural process like that I notice. So it's wonderful when people really want to wake up and they want to wake up now and they're open to it and ready for it. It's awesome. It's like going straight down the fucking rabbit hole is what it's like. It's amazing.
Yeah, you said in your book that the only thing that is better, I think you said, than, I don't know if you said better, but at least equally good, is waking up with, next to someone or in front of, seeing it happening to someone else.
Yeah, with them. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, great. I'm just gonna move the table.
Here's the funny thing though. This just occurred to me. What comes with that is you have to have 100% willingness to feel their suffering in a completely helpless way without trying to wake them up as well. You have to be able to go there with them.
Yeah.
And that takes some discernment and some clarification and some time for the body mind to be able to even do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's nothing to make separation from the suffering going, oh, well, I'm awake, I'm not feeling, that's their suffering. Like, it's not like that.
Yeah.
Suffering is just suffering.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So we in to that question about how much healing is needed to wake up. And when I say wake up, I mean I mean the great, you know,
Yeah.
no self experience of all.
Yeah.
Uh, what's
So
your view
if
there?
I dodge the question, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I totally forgot we were talking about that.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, we.
So healing is a little bit of a tricky word. I'm always a little cautious even using the word.
Yeah.
Because you can definitely identify as the one who's always doing healing all your life, like, and not actually have that even the initial awakening, right? That's what I would really caution people. So if you're interested in waking up, right? Anyone listening to this, right? I would say strike while the iron's hot. It's kind of a freebie. The universe will give you that freebie, but you got to give yourself to the universe. You got to be willing to let go and really just like you did, right? If you're willing to do that, that's great. After that, we can have a conversation about what healing means and what the shadow work and emotion work is all about and stuff. If you're not inclined to wake up yet, or it's interesting, but something in you is like, no, I'm not ready. And I've had many people say that to me, like, I'm interested, but I'm not ready. Trust that. Then, yeah, do some emotion work ahead of time. That will maybe help. It'll clear the path a little bit and stuff. But really, the true full on heavy duty shadow work is after awakening. And then I can
With the
say something
awakening, you
like
mean, sorry, with the awakening,
initial
then you
awakening.
mean initial awakening. Yeah.
Yeah, Kensho. We could say Kensho. That's what they call it in Zen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm getting at is, after that, once someone's gone through that, then they'll understand what I say when I say healing is kind of the wrong word for it, because you're not trying to make someone better. You're trying to see through the illusions that have made you suffer in the first place, that have created the suffering experience. So it's more about clear seeing, but you do have to, but it is in the emotion spectrum for sure. This work is in the emotion spectrum. So bypassing, you don't want to bypass in this space. If you bypass in this space, you end up weird. Like, you might end up being a little bit of a cult leader or something. I mean, this actually still happens, right? Hopefully
Yeah.
it's going to be less and less. And that one of the reasons I wrote my book was to say, hey, you don't need the charismatic teacher to, get weird with you for 10 years before you realize that was the wrong path. Forget it. You can do this yourself, with the resources that are readily available. But yeah, if you have a significant shift in identity, and you really, really fight the emotion work, that's when you can end up in some kind of bad places, actually, for a while. And it may be a while before you realize that that's what happened to you. And it may be your students that remind you at some point. This is kind of the exception, but it definitely happens. So that's why you got to do the work. When the work comes to you, just do the work. When the emotions come knocking at your door, open the door. You're not going to know what to do with them. It's going to be painful. It's going to be disorienting at times. It's going to be hard. And even the good strategies people will teach you can still be really hard for a while. And that's okay. You just got to do the work, right? That's the emotion work, shadow work, post can show.
Right. Yeah. I think the way I have been avoiding myself is I'll give an example. That is, well, I'm sitting here in my mom's house, and I have been here for some time now, since I came home from the States 7 years ago. Yeah, I'm definitely one of the ones who took this, had some awakening and going through a process, and then I just lost a lot of interest in getting a job, and I became kind of afraid and very anxious about working for a boss, for instance. So I've been living a very simple life since then, and I know that I'll have to. It's good for my development. It's the next step for me to step out of here. Not that it is. I'm very grateful that I can be here, but that is yeah. Even though I can sit, yesterday being very and it happens more and more now that oh, now it's about to happen. This is going to be it, and then
Here it comes.
strong. Here it comes.
Oh, but then the mind will say afterwards, it'll say, oh, I didn't let go that time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'll get another shot
next time. Yeah, next time.
next time. But yeah, I've gone through a quite. It feels like a long process now. 6 years. But yeah, there's some sticky stuff probably that makes me avoid the truth and also avoid the some parts of my life just because of this mechanism.
I think it's very common in the ways that we avoid. So first of all, as I mentioned before, like, we got to do the work, we got to do the emotional work and all that. I'm quite sure you've done a ton of it already. I know you have. I can just tell talking to you, and that's great. For everyone listening, there will be massive resistance to this. No matter how your life looks, even if you were willing to do the work and you do the work, there's still going to be like resistance patterns, areas in your life you don't want. You're like, God, I can't believe it. I've been doing this, and I have to look at this now, and oh my gosh, I keep doing it. It's just part of the deal. You got to go through all that. That's why it's so challenging, because it's unchoreographed. It's not neat. It's messy, and everyone has different proclivities. Some people will do the opposite of you in this setting. They'll stay really, really busy. They'll stay really, and that's just as distorting. Just we could not stopping, not sitting to just feel all this stuff, to feel the doubt and shame and all. You just got to feel it all, So yeah, for you, I mean, number one is just be gentle, be kind to yourself. Like you're taking up a very, very challenge, whether you like it or not, you're taking up very, very challenging, the most challenging thing a person can really go through, in my experience. Really, you are, and that's the realization process. So that in and of itself says so much about you, and it's awesome. Now,
thank you.
The logistics of life, when you need to go and start developing a certain type of career, making money and all this, I can't answer that, but you'll sort that out. But do notice the mind adds an extra layer of judgment on top of all of that, because you're just doing what you're doing. It's fine. Muji sat in his sister. I think I remember him saying he sat in his sister's house for many years while he was going through this like process of unbinding or whatever it was. Oh. And he looking back, he said it was grace. I'm glad that the opportunity to do that. It's really wonderful. Some people don't have the opportunity. You could be single mother with 3 kids and you don't have a moment to rest, so it's okay. Everything's fine. And but do trust your those subtle instincts to say, oh, maybe it's time now to go start a career or something, yeah, that small voice that sort of has the peaceful voice, but it also has a bit of authority to it, and you just trust, okay, yeah, maybe it's time to do that. And I think more and more what I've found is you just start to trust your instincts more directly. You start to, I'm sorry, I'm gonna make a little thing here.
That's okay.
Start to trust your instincts more immediately and directly, without all the jibber jabber of the mind in the background going, oh, well, you're wasting time, or you should be doing this, or you should be doing that. Yeah. That's just noise. It's really background noise.
Right. Thank you so much for pointing that out, and also coming off of even the example of Muji, who lived with his sister. I didn't know that. Yeah, and I noticed that when you talked about that, relief comes here, and I know and I feel the clarity comes in. So, which means that there probably was some dust around that story. And
well, if you think about it, I mean, if you think about it in the past, right? You read the suttas or whatever, or even you hear the old Zen stories. In the past, the paradigm was the people waking up were already monastics. They lived in a monastery, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there were householders waking up, and there were arhats in the suttas who were householders and stuff. But the traditional way we think about this is a monastic process. And that's not what we're doing here at all. We're doing quite the opposite. We live in the most busy, fast-paced, constantly evolving culture in the history of humanity, right? So what the right answer is, as far as the balance of how much time you give yourself to spend in contemplation and inquiry and meditation, and how much you go out and work in the world, maybe not even just so that you're a citizen that's contributing, but because you actually need that texture as well. Life will put you in positions in like a vocation or in a relationship that you wouldn't see just sitting on the mat. You have, and sometimes that brings the emotions to the surface that you have to see, or the fixations or the belief patterns. So you may need that texture actually, but no one can tell exactly at this phase of things, for the way this is evolving, this whole awakening thing, what the right mixture and combination is. We're all kind of experiments. We're all doing the experiments ourselves. And so I think a mixture is good, to have some time really to, without responsibility, and to sit on the mat and to contemplate, and then some time also to go out there and put yourself in stressful situations you'd rather not put yourself in, and feeling other people's repressed emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. I also feel that let's call it meditation or inquiry, that goes better if I'm also being a little exposed in my life,
Mm-hmm.
also awakening some making some maybe layers of resistance more conscious, coming up to the
Yes,
surface.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. One thing I've also wondered about lately is some people seem, it really puzzles me sometimes, some people seem more psychologically really psychologically healthy, and really, you know, socially smooth, and have are really secure in the relationship. I'm also referring to a term in psychology called healthy attachment styles. Have you heard of that term?
Yes.
And meeting people on the awakening path um, may or may not be, you know, healthy, you know, have, you know, a quote unquote have a healthy attachment style. You know, maybe a psychiatrist would say you have trouble with, you know, relating to people, or in the relationships you have abandonment issues. And
Yeah.
then there's lots of people who wouldn't get that kind of diagnostication, but don't have a, you know, clue about what we're talking about, or even a sense, or maybe not even a direct experience of that, you know, peace. Has that ever crossed your mind? And in that case, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I see this a lot. Human nature, mind identification, all of this, it fascinates me, right? So one thing I'll say about, so your observations are something I've looked very deeply into for years, because I can't not see it, but it's very interesting. So lately I've said a few times, and I like this verbiage, but who knows how long I'll say it, because I notice I change the way I say things. But that mind identification, which is the human condition, which is Thoreau's life of quiet desperation, which is dukkha, which is suffering, which is what you wake up from, right? Which is humans, humans
Mm,
and their internal worlds and so forth. Mind identification is actually a stable kind of dissociation, and it's stable in that the stability actually comes from social currency and social endorsement. So what you described would be someone who has a sort of, maybe like an evolved ego, or a well-refined ego, or
yeah.
a functioning healthy ego. And that's fine. That's great. It's fine. People like that do actually contribute a lot to society. The
Mm,
problem with that, the issue that I see with that, it's not an issue, but the thing that I think you can't ignore about that is that it's very conditions based, meaning it's just a matter of the right set of conditions before someone who has that stable, dissociated, but socially endorsed state of whatever status, let's say,
yeah.
um, suddenly fall apart. Uh,
Right.
um,
Well,
it's serendipity. It's sort of luck in the relative world, I think. But I can give you many examples of my own experience of coming across, interacting with people who have that very stable, not just a stable ego, but a stable ego that's externalized and socially endorsed. They have wealth. They make good, smart decisions financially. They have security financially. They have even good relationships. That's a plus or minus. Some people have the financial side and the sort of vocational side, but they don't have the emotional connection side. And that's something that can hide in the shadow. You wouldn't know it if you met somebody, say in public. They may have a very confident persona. Like I've seen examples of all this stuff. On the other side of things, their emotional life is a disaster, right? But there are even people who have even healthy emotional lives too. And so really they have a good set of conditions, and they're doing well in the social matrix, and that's all fine. I don't think that person needs to wake up. I have no agenda with it. However, I will tell you, often those people have the most trouble when they start to feel the ground come out from under them. When awakening, when the rubber really meets the road with awakening, is when you start to actually feel your identity shifting and things start to fall away. That can be super destabilizing to someone like that, actually, more so than someone whose life has already been in chaos. Like people who grew up in really unpredictable environments, abuse history, they're in survival mode their whole life. This is like water in the desert to them. They typically do really well with awakening, initially, especially, because why not? My life has been a shit show. It's been suffering all along, all the way up and down. It's been suffering. Why wouldn't I want to wake up? Of course they want to wake up, right? Now things sort of the playing field levels later on when we talk about shadow work and stuff, but that initial shift can be so daunting and terrifying to someone who has a very stable ego. Essentially I can tell you an interesting sort of side note about this is when I was younger and I was really suffering before this, shift. I was 24 years old. I suffered so much. And one of the things I suffered from was I couldn't connect to anybody.
Right.
And I would look at people who it was so easy for them just to have relationships and connections with one another. And they looked so spontaneous, and it really frustrated me. And it was like, there was jealousy behind it. It was like probably resentment, but massive frustration. Now looking back, it's funny. I almost feel the opposite. I don't take delight when I see people suffering, but if they are suffering and they want to wake up, that's the perfect combination. I feel a little bit more for somebody who just by random luck has good conditions, so they're not really inclined to dig deeper or dig through the sort of bottom of their identity structure,
Right.
because why would they do that? So I almost feel a little bad for them kind of now.
Oh wow, yeah. I'm glad I heard your view on that, because I've almost felt a little bit self-critical about taking the things way too spiritual. So yeah, it's good to have to weigh that one out a little bit. After and I talk about after liberation, or awakening for that matter, becoming healthier psychologically, can that happen? Can that does that have more potential? Can that go faster? Can you integrate better after deep realization?
I would say the integration happens essentially spontaneously, and that's a wonderful thing about it. But the caveat would be this that the ideas that we have about health and fortifying ourselves and strengthening ourselves and all that, they largely they essentially fall away. Doesn't mean you don't know how to take care of yourself. You still are going to eat what you want to eat and so forth. But the preoccupation with that, the idea that somehow liberation or awakening or both are going to make things look in any way that you can possibly imagine, it just gets blown out of the water. It just gets blown out of the water. It's very strange. The best I can offer is, generally speaking, I see people have similar proclivities before and after. But if you have a very overarching tendency in life, a habit maybe of obsessive exercise, right, which underpins a fear of death, of weakness, of vulnerability, and many people do this and don't see it. If you have that, I can almost guarantee you it's going to dramatically reduce certainly after liberation, because because of what it was based on will be seen through. So, but generally speaking, people who like to exercise continue to exercise. People who like to do art will continue to do art. New dimensions of expression come through for sure, and that's really cool to see, especially in artists and musicians. that they may have had the ability to bring that through before, but it usually even gets more poignant. Your ability to really channel some deeper truth through art is beautiful, and the struggle around it will be gone, which is so lovely, because that's a lot of the challenge of being an artist, is the struggle that comes with it too.
Yeah. Ah, beautiful. That's I'm so glad. The thing that really is touching me here is the motivation and the inspiration, and I think that's important too. Maybe an underestimated component in these talks about awakening and non-duality is the you can do it part, and it's awesome. So it is and it's the awesome part. This is awesome. Is is not very talked about for good reasons probably. But I just, like I said in the beginning, it really is a great confirmation for me, who has put so much energy into this, that the confirmation that keep going, this is good, this is you're doing the right thing.
And the caution that you're talking about, and again, some subcultures of teaching and like Neo-Advaita purposely avoids this, and Zen even kind of does too in certain ways, but avoids this talk of like what you get out of it, right? And the enjoyment of let's say non-dual realization. Non-dual specifically is pretty enjoyable, physically enjoyable, but I can see why there's caution to say those sorts of things. Then again, that's just a transmission style. That's the way they transmit. That's the way they speak. That culture, that the Tony Parsons type of culture, whatever. It's fine, and it can be quite potent and powerful to point that way. But it's a style, right? So, for instance, there's other people, like I think of Gary Weber, very practical, pragmatic guy, deeply realized guy, no doubt about it. I saw a video where he described, I don't know what it is, but there was a questionnaire somewhere. It's like the non-dual experience questionnaire. It literally asks questions to discern what degree of non-dual experience you have moment to moment. And then I've seen this also other places, but I remember a video where he showed it, and the experience of clear non-dual realization is higher on the chart of enjoyability than even sex, than anything. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Yeah. But it's not, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily constant, because nothing is constant. And you can also feel pain too. You can't avoid pain at all, physical pain. So physical pain will come. But it's very strange that even physical pain, maybe unless it gets really severe, has a sort of sweetness to it at some point with the non-dual realization, because there's nothing questioning it anymore. There's nothing resisting or avoiding or trying not to feel it. It's just what's happening. So there is the experience of non-dual, no separation, no boundaries, and the deeper full experience of non-dual, which mean no actual distance, no physical objects at all. That is physically enjoyable. The word I use a lot is intimacy, because I don't have a better word for it. But it's intimate. Like you look at a tree, and there's not a tree over there and me over here. It's just this intimate experience of tree person universe. I don't know how to say it. Movement, stillness, everything, nothing. It's all intermixed though, and it's so beautiful, and it's sublimely empty of any inherent existence too, which is really a trip, and it's wonderful. But it's also not nothingness. I always like to point that out, because nothingness is really conceptual, pretty conceptual actually.
Is that Daniel Ingram? He said it's been that experience of life has been even a more he even appreciates it more now than he did when he entered that world. Would you say that? And also Adyashanti and Suzanne Marie and I've heard a number of teachers talk about that there's the deepening never ends.
I would agree with that.
And it's of course impossible for someone who's not there to understand that, because it sounds so, how can it be complete and then keep deepening? But could you give a try? on
Yeah, it's
how that's
deepening.
like?
It's sure it's deepening right now, but you have to understand the confines of the way the mind understands even the concept of deepening. Like, where is deepening going? What is the mind imagining? It's going deeper in some direction downward. How about
Yeah,
deepening in every direction? How about deepening in clarity, deepening in love, deepening in intimacy,
yeah,
deepening in completely paradoxical ability to move in two directions at once, to be completely still and moving at the same time. That deepens and is deepening right now. It's doing it right now, ongoing, always,
right,
always, always, always. That's how
right.
reality feels. It's the way reality, I could say it's the way reality actually feels. It's crazy. It's so bizarre because the mind thinks in terms of limitations. This has no limitation. There's no limitation to reality. It's
Yeah,
no, not even a limitation to structure itself such that there's a world where there's something that's limited and unlimited. It's beyond all of that.
yeah,
And so, I mean, I can go on saying paradoxical things all day long,
mm,
but I prefer to tell people, hey, dig in first to your own identity, like that. Start there, and it will lead to this. It leads to this place where all words, concepts, paradigms, views, and frames of reference just fall completely away. And it's, again, the word is like radically intimate. The intimacy of the sound. My computer's making a like a hum over here, and it's so profound. It's more important than it's not. It's not even in the realm of importance, but I'd say it's more important than anything we're talking about,
mm,
or than the whole life and death of this body mind. It's just that. That's how profound that is. But it has infinite dimension and infinite facets to it as well. Right
mm,
now,
mm.
that exploration is ongoing. Reality is just endlessly moving into itself. So yeah, it's always deepening, widening, clarifying, all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not
Hey,
happening for anyone. That's the key.
yeah.
There's no one
I'll
apart
remember.
from it going, cool. I can't wait till I get that. Right. That's not what we're talking about.
Right. Uh, a few weeks ago, I had an experience with taking psilocybin mushrooms. It was a fairly big dose. I've heard you talk about psychedelics and that it's not necessary for awakening. Um, but I'll just refer to it because I came really close to some kind of okay, like the mind going really, you know, neurotic, um like, and I don't know if it was the tip of something or the edge of something, but it surely felt that way, that if you let go of that little dot that you think you are, uh you know don't do that. um okay, it can be, the dot can be here or the dot can be here, I don't care, but there has to be a dot somewhere that where there's a reference point. And then all these stories, these the mind is racing and is using incredible excuses not to let go of that dot. Like, I had to ask for a friend's permission for me to let go, and there was clearly important for the mind to, a big project for the mind to let go. And um I'm wondering if essentially, and intuitively, I feel that the answer must be, oh yeah, are you there still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That the answer is probably that naturally it will just drop at some point, or you just keep doing what you're doing, keep don't stress about it, don't think that you're have to do something, don't think that you have to not do something, and if you do something or don't do something, it's okay, it'll
Mm-hmm.
just watch
Yeah.
the process. But yeah, I did it's been tempting for me to ask, is there a big boss that you have to
Mm-hmm.
fight, essentially, or like a dark can it get really is there a big boss before the full thing arrives? With that,
Yeah.
I mean liberation.
Yeah, it's the subtle self sense, or the self filter. You can see through yourself with a deep awakening, and the glimpsing of no self, the understanding, and even the instinctual knowing that there's actually no self here. That can be realized without being realized in all its aspects. You can realize that and still experience duality. And I think a lot of people do, actually.
Yeah.
And you have a significant degree of realization, but you're physically experiencing duality. The subject object experience is still there. Things feel solid and real and all that. But so that can definitely happen. But once even those layers go away, the layer that makes things appear dualistic, that makes things appear solid, all that can go away, and there can be this fundamental. It's not the most fundamental, but it's fundamental to everything you think you could ever possibly be, and your experiencing of the world and self, is this little layer, this thin layer of perfume that I might call like the subtle self sense, or the last bastion of self. And that it's not a dot, but it does feel like, the way that the mind processes it makes it feel like there's some center, like in the head or whatever. But that's not always what it feels like either. It may not. That could even go away, and there can still be the filtering of self going on here and there. Now, this is really deep stage stuff we're talking about, so it may not relate to a lot of people, but there are people who are here, and I can think of like 2 or 3 people I work with reasonably regularly right now who are right in this vicinity, which is interesting to watch. But the approach to it can be totally spontaneous, as you said. Sit in presence and just let that natural exploration of presence, exploring itself, go on without distracting and remaining alert enough so that happens. Or you can actually probe it a little bit, and it's actually a different kind of self-inquiry. It can be the same self-inquiry, but it has a very different feel to it. So there's the initial self-inquiry to wake up, right, that we were talking about earlier, to have that initial awakening. And you wake up to self as being, the big S, self, or the I am sense, or unbound consciousness. All of that is kind of the same thing, right? So, but this is different. This is actually tracking it down, like you got like a magnifying glass going through your experience of like, where is the self? When does it come online? When does it feel like a self and not a self? How do I know the difference? And you're looking only in immediate experience. You're looking in the sound, sensations, thoughts, consciousness. You're kind of tracking it down, like, when it feels like it's there, why does it feel like it's there? Why? What is your evidence? What do you use? What are you even referring to? Right. And just keep looking for it in that way. That can be another approach to it. But if it feels like struggle, this is really important. If it feels like struggle, if it feels frustrating, struggle, confusion, you either need to go back and do some emotion work. If there's a massive amount of confusion or anger or grief, go do the emotion work. Come back. If it feels more like just struggle, just bare struggle without like a lot of emotion, but just physical struggle, it's frustrating, it's hard to do. Do some reactivity work, probably. There may be not equanimity. Equanimity might have not completely clarified itself at this point.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I always say the clues are in your experience. It's always presented right now, right here. What needs to be addressed and how to address it is usually, there's different ways, but
great. Yeah. Wow. It's been an hour and a half now, so
okay.
I think I'll let you go, and thank you cordially, heartfeltly for this time I had with you. It was so
really good.
Yeah, it was juicy. Yeah,
it
I
was
can't
a
wait
good one.
to.
Yeah, it was nice chatting with you.
Yeah. So thank you to Dr. Angelo Dilullo. Follow his YouTube channel, Simply Always Awake on YouTube. He's making videos almost daily, it seems sometimes. A lot of stuff there, answering questions about awakening. The kind of questions that I have here, going very specific sometimes, which I really like. So yeah, thanks for watching, and thank you, Angelo, for coming in again.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
I really enjoyed it.